Shalom. This week we are reading Parashat Behar, the penultimate Torah reading for the book of Vayikra. So, what are your thoughts about space and time? How are you dealing with those issues? Any problems there with your philosophy of space and time? Of course, today, if we want to have access to the great body of world knowledge, we turn to Wikipedia. So I see the following regarding the philosophy of space and time. The philosophy of space and time is the branch of philosophy concerned with the issues surrounding the ontology, which is the philosophical study of the nature of being, existence, and reality as such, and also epistemology, which is the branch of philosophy concerned with the nature and scope, that is, limitations of knowledge, and the character of space and time. While such ideas have been central to philosophy from its inception, the philosophy of space and time was both an inspiration for and a central aspect of early analytical philosophy. Moving right along through space and time to the subject of physics. In physics, there is a concept called space-time, or space-time, which in any mathematical model is any mathematical model that combines space and time into, you guessed it, a single continuum. Space-time is usually interpreted with space as being three-dimensional and time playing the role of a fourth dimension that is of a different sort, that is, from the spatial dimensions. According to certain Euclidean space perceptions, the universe has 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. By combining space and time into a single manifold, physicists have significantly simplified a large number of physical theories, as well as described in a more uniform way the workings of the universe at both the supergalactic and subatomic levels. Exactly the main issue addressed by Parashat Behar. We turn to the beginning of this week's Torah portion, and we read, Hashem spoke to Moshe on Mount Sinai, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land that I give you, the land shall observe a Sabbath rest for Hashem. For 6 years you may sow your field, and for 6 years you may prune your vineyard, and you may gather in its crop, but the 7th year shall be a complete rest for the land, a Sabbath for Hashem." And this is a very unusual concept because Shabbat, first of all, we know the commandment of the Sabbath, as is manifest in the 10 Commandments, is a testimonial to Ma'aseh Breshit, to the act of creation. And it's something which very much affects humanity, the individual, the level of nefesh, of life. It's a commandment wherein the individual is obligated to reflect in his particular lifestyle his recognition of Hashem's creation, creative process. And it's a manifest of time. It's an issue of the essence of time, of one day being different than all other days. How does this concept superimpose itself on the plane, the dimension of space, of the earth? This seems to be a collision of these 2 dimensions, indeed, of time and space. So, the Sabbatical Year, which is so central to the Torah and so important, what exactly is the concept here of Shnat HaShmitta, the 7th year, that is actually called by the verse a Sabbath for Hashem, which is the exact same expression that's used regarding Shabbat, the 7th day, which we observe every week. Now Rashi, the holy commentator, is obviously disturbed by this whole idea, by this concept, and this expression, how the land itself is going to be observing a Sabbath for Hashem. So Rashi tells us that the idea of these words, that it is a Shabbat for Hashem, this sabbatical year, he says the idea is that it is for the sake of Hashem. And he cites the great Midrash Torah Kohanim, and he tells us for the sake of Hashem, just as it states regarding the Sabbath of creation. And regarding the Sabbath of creation, in Exodus 20 we read, "Remember the Sabbath day to sanctify it. 6 days shall you work and accomplish all your work, but the 7th day is Sabbath to Hashem your God. You shall not do any work, you, your son, your daughter, your servant, your maidservant, your animal, your stranger within your gates. For in 6 days Hashem made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and he rested on the 7th day. Therefore Hashem blessed the Sabbath day and sanctified it." And regarding this enigmatic idea of the Sabbath of the land, Shnat Shmitta, the Sabbatical Year, the Zohar tells us these words: it is an actual Sabbath to God. So this idea seems to confound the laws of physics, the space-time continuum, and everything that we understand about the interworkings of these dimensions, because the Torah is taking a concept which is clearly related to our position in time and adopting that concept completely for the land. So how do we understand this? When we think about Shabbat, the Shabbat of creation, Shabbat itself, that is, recognizing the Sabbath and marking it, is really the very purpose of creation. In the Sabbath prayers every week we say to God, "You have sanctified the 7th day for your name. It is the reason for the creation of heaven and earth." This reflects the concept that our sages teach us, that the world was actually created to last only 6 days. And even today, the world has enough energy to survive for 6 days, but every Sabbath, the whole world and every soul therein is renewed. And the individual that connects to this, that observes the Sabbath, has a new spiritual capacity to reach new heights. Through his observance of the Shabbat, he literally becomes himself a vehicle, a vessel to hold the presence of God in this world. So the purpose of Shabbat in time, in our lives, is literally to reflect the very purpose of creation, recognition of God. So too, regarding the Shmitta, the Sabbatical Year, which, as the verse states, is actually an aspect of Shabbat, as the verse tells us, it is a Shabbat to Hashem, since, by the same token, the Sabbatical Year for the land of Israel is the whole purpose, the whole reason for the people of Israel dwelling in the land of Israel. And thus, it's called Shabbat, because just as Shabbat in time is the soul of all creation and accomplishes the uplifting of each soul, so too the Sabbatical Year is the soul of the land of Israel, and thus the soul of the entire world, because every level of creation has a soul. The finer aspects, the lighter aspects of creation, the aspect of life, the individual, the human being has a soul, but the earth also has a soul. And the soul which the Creator breathed into the land of Israel is renewed through the Sabbatical Year, just as Shabbat is a validation and a renewal of all creation. The world's existence, as it were, is validated through Shabbat, and the land of Israel, the Torah is telling us, only exists through the observance of the Sabbatical Year. And thus the Zohar tells us that all blessings in this world are dependent completely, and they flow to all of creation from the Shabbat. And so too all blessings on the level of the earth emanate and come through the Shmitta, through the Sabbatical Year. This is exactly what we read further on here in our chapter, we read, "The land will give its fruit, and you will eat your fill. You will dwell securely upon it. If you will say, 'What will we eat in the 7th year?' Behold, we will not sow and not gather in our crops." And God tells us, "I will command my blessing for you in the 6th year, and it will yield a crop sufficient for the 3-year period." Blessing is commanded, ordained, flows through the concept of the Shmitta, the Sabbatical Year. And this Sabbath of the land reconfigures the space-time continuum because it sweetens all of the judgments, and it produces an effect of supernal peace and tranquility and harmony for all of the world. And thus the verse tells us, when you come into the land that I give you, the land shall observe a Sabbath. Meaning, the whole purpose of your coming into the land is for the land to observe its Shabbat rest for Hashem. And this, actually, this revelation in the very beginning of our Torah portion is an insight of the secrets, the real truth behind the inner workings of the space-time continuum, because the source of all blessing in this world is the recognition of Hashem in His own creation and the return of every level of creation and reality to its pristine state, and the comprehension, the recognition by all of creation of Hashem in His world.